And so a big part of that being driven by what we've seen over the last 2.5 years of more people wanting to be able to access internet from home. What are the trends you've seen over the last 2.5 years, and how has that impacted your decision making?
Well, it's interesting that I think on a traditional old provider, we didn't have the symmetrical internet. And many of the fiber connections do. We have symmetrical internet, so
which becomes important for Zoom when you're both downloading video and trying to upload your video back up.
Yeah, and I work from home a lot. I have 2 kids that are always on. My wife works from home, so we use a significant amount of bandwidth. And without that upstream capability, I'm kicking the kids off of their gaming, things like that. And people just live from home. This service we can do support gaming. We wired all of the ports within a unit, so people have their separate spaces. But more importantly, we had a lot of people that were out in the pet park, or they were out in our common area. Not so much during the pandemic inside, but over by the pool, and they were working outside, and they can just do that anywhere they want, and it's been easy.
Same quality of service, same bandwidth.
Yeah.
Same quality for Zoom and other high bandwidth type of applications.
Yeah, you see kids sitting outside watching TV, and they're watching, streaming, whatever.
Okay. Anything you'd add?
Yeah, and to that point, on the managed Wi-Fi, being on your own, what we call a VLAN or virtual LAN, that follows you around the property to all the different areas. So even after you leave your unit, but it maintains that same security level with you. So think of it like a cell phone. You're driving down the highway talking on the phone's just pinging the different wireless towers as you go. Same thing as you're walking around the property, but you're on your own private network the whole time. You're not switching on to guest networks or anything else. So you have your own encrypted code and your back-end firewall security to your account, even though you're anywhere on that network. And that's huge for people working from home because, there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of concern about viruses and hacks and, phishing and all these other things going on that companies don't want going and attacking their corporate networks. So that when people are working from home and, they're sitting at Starbucks or they're going to these other random places, they're exposed on those public Wi-Fi networks. But this way, anywhere they are on the property, they actually have the enterprise-grade security with them.
And so if they have some smart devices in their unit, like an Echo or a comparable device, it's like tunneling through, and they're not seeing everyone else's Echo on their network, but they can still see their Echo. That communication still happens across the entire property, correct?
Yeah, and they can be sitting at the pool looking at those devices on their phone. And an example we always use, and I don't know if it gets used as much right now, is you can print. So if you have your printer hooked up back in your unit, and you're sitting at the pool and you're like, I'm going to go somewhere, you can hit print, and you walk upstairs and it's sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny with a managed Wi-Fi network, you can do all that stuff and be secure. We actually had an older property and the network wasn't set up properly, and folks were seeing other folks' devices. That hasn't happened on the Dish network, so it's managed versus unmanaged.
Sure. I think we had one more, and yep. So managed AV, and I know that the audio-visual term is kind of a vintage term. How do you guys refer to this, and then what is kind of the value and benefit of not only talking about internet, but this ability to, hey, we want to have these 25 channels, and we're going to offer them to the entire property, and the ability to be able to access those from any device using the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I mean, we say entertainment or streaming video or streaming entertainment generally is what we refer to, because that can be subscription based, or it could be someone just watching videos on YouTube and they're just streaming those. But so by providing the streaming service, we're not tethering somebody's TV part or component of the service to their unit, so they can go anywhere, but they can also go on multiple devices. So there's some interesting studies about teenagers and where they watch video today, and the majority of them aren't even watching it on big TV screens anymore. They're on iPads or they're on
Laptop.
phones. Yeah, and so they could do that. So if you're in your home and you have kids and they're sitting on their iPad in one room and you're on the TV in the other room, you have all this access. Or as you walk out, the other thing, we bundle it in at a pretty affordable price because, as being a TV company originally, there's some discounts there, and we also have some proprietary technology without getting deep into it, a smart box that we install and then it distributes, and we also bring in all the local channels. And an interesting stat of live TV today in the United States, over half of live TV that's watched is still the big four locals. In addition to some of the main driver channels that you see from an entertainment perspective. So we also bring that in using an over-the-air antenna, and it's full 1080p HD signal, but we integrate it in the back end so the end user doesn't know the difference. They don't know if the streaming they're looking at is from a satellite or if it's from an over-the-air antenna, but it dramatically cuts our costs by doing it this way and then integrating it so that way we can bundle it and it becomes a true double play versus just a managed Wi-Fi offering, which is the driver for these communities, but it's an add-on that now you have a double play and you're giving everyone that, and anyone who wants traditional TV can upgrade, but that it goes with them. And then because they're doing it browser-based and they're doing it on devices, then they can also switch over. So their TV is in the similar place to what their Netflix is or what their YouTube is or what other media they're consuming.
And the key is live sports. And you guys had ESPN off for about 24 hours, but it's back on now, right?
All good.
Okay. So we've got a few minutes left here. Thanks for your patience as what has probably felt a little bit like a commercial, but I want to frame it as that it's foundational to everything else that we've talked about. There are certainly other providers who you can, after you've talked to Dish, talk to the other providers, see which one you feel like is able to provide what you're looking for. But we do feel strongly that Dish is ahead of the pack, and that's why they're here. That's why they're a sponsor. And what they're doing, we think really does unlock all of the other tools that you can bring in when we're talking about this intersection of technology and housing. Are there questions that any of you have for either of our panelists up here in the time that we have left? Got one here in the back. Thank you. Wait for the microphone. Here it comes.
In a development with multiple units, can you opt into some of these things and opt out? So I know you've got your television channels, but if they wanted to keep some other ISP service or have their own Wi-Fi.
We've chosen not to do that. Having multiple providers it's expensive. It's not really a benefit to the customer. So we provide it on site, they've got it, and my experience has been everyone hates your cell phone company and everyone hates your cable company. And wherever they get their internet, they don't care as long as it works. So that's been the way we've looked at it.
Because you don't want to provide support to all the different type of providers. And because of at least the model from what we saw up here, you're going to be offering it at a price that's lower than what they're going to get it from elsewhere. So you wouldn't even have people wanting it is what I think the hope would be, right?
That's the goal.
Yeah, and I would say structurally, to answer your question, there's no prohibition on that. So especially if we come into an existing property and we're recabling, a complete overbuild, so there's an existing system in there. If someone was to choose to stay on the previous service, they could. It generally financially wouldn't make sense and isn't going to give them the same level of service of what a new managed Wi-Fi is, but we're not coming in legally and saying, no, you have no choice. They would have that choice. It just generally doesn't make sense for the consumer.
Maybe one more question if there's any out there. All right. Oh, yep, we do.
How do you think about, thanks. How do you think about security for your residents as far as internet activity, their devices that they tend to install in the home. Does Dish provide that as a service on top of the managed Wi-Fi, or is it incumbent on the residents to figure that out on their own?
And by security, meaning like external intrusion?
Yeah, primarily.
We don't currently. We have some additional services. At the beginning, when I showed you all the portfolio of brands, there's one of the brands is called OnTech, which utilizes that nationwide technician force that we have out there. And they offer a lot of single-family services, some multifamily. I'll give you an example. In my single-family home in Denver, I had Dish install all my smart home devices. They came in and they did my doorbell camera, my back camera, thermostat, home hub, like everything, smart locks. And they just came, scheduled an appointment. They came in, they brought the equipment, did it all, and, paid directly to them. In multifamily, there's a few things they do. I know they can do camera systems. I'd have to, circle back with you on their full array. But as an actual security service, Dish does not offer anything that's in the security category.
Okay. All right, well, we are out of time. If you can please join me in a round of applause for Dish as a sponsor, for Steve for sharing his experience.